Did you know there are over 1,000 abandoned amusement parks scattered across the globe? Each one a silent witness to laughter turned to echoes? The thought alone sends a shiver down my spine. These places, once bursting with the sounds of joy screams, roller coasters, the tinkling tunes of carousels, the chatter of families, now stand desolate, their memories of happiness swallowed by time. What happens to all that joy when the gates close for the last time? Does it simply fade away, or does it linger, twisted into something darker, something that waits in the shadows of rusted tracks and crumbling midway stalls? My name is Ethan Blackwood, and I've spent the last decade chasing the unknown. As a paranormal investigator, I've walked through haunted houses, explored forgotten cemeteries, and even spent nights in asylums said to be cursed. But nothing fascinates me more than abandoned amusement parks. There's something uniquely eerie about them. Places built for celebration and wonder, now left to rot, their cheerful facades peeling away to reveal a hollow, unsettling core. They're like time capsules of joy gone wrong, and with every creak of a decaying ride or whisper of wind through overgrown paths, they seem to tell stories. Stories of ghostly figures riding empty coasters, of laughter echoing where no one stands, of urban legends that refuse to die. I've heard the tales whispers from locals, reports from urban explorers, even shaky footage uploaded online by thrill seekers who dared to trespass. These parks aren't just relics. They're magnets for the strange and the terrifying. And I've made it my mission to visit them, to peel back the layers of myth and history, to see if the spirits of these lost playgrounds truly linger, or if the real horror is in what we imagine when the lights go out. Unraveling the mysteries of these deserted places isn't as simple as it sounds. Each park has its own past, its own secrets, and its own brand of fear. Some say the ghosts are real souls tied to the parks by tragedy or unfinished business. Others claim it's all in our heads, the product of overactive imaginations fueled by decay and silence. My challenge is to find the truth, to sift through the legends and confront the shadows myself. I'll visit some of the most notorious abandoned amusement parks in the world, places where the air feels heavy with more than just dust, where every step echoes with the weight of what was left behind. This won't be a casual stroll through history. These parks are remote, dangerous, and often forbidden. Trespassing laws, crumbling structures, and the sheer isolation make every trip a risk. But it's the stories that drive me forward, the promise of something inexplicable waiting in the dark. As I pack my gear, flashlights, audio recorders, a camera to capture what my eyes might miss, I can't shake the feeling that I'm about to step into something bigger than I expect. The question gnaws at me: what will I find when I cross those rusted gates? Answers, or something I'll wish I'd never seen. I start my journey with Pripyat Amusement Park in Ukraine, a place frozen in time since the Chernobyl disaster over 30 years ago. The tales I've heard about it are enough to make even a skeptic like me pause. Little did I know, my first stop would bring me face to face with a legend I thought was just a story. The road to Pripyat was a winding path through a landscape that felt like it had been forgotten by time. As I drove, the dense forest on either side seemed to close in, the trees skeletal and bare, their branches clawing at the overcast sky. It was late afternoon, but the light was already fading, engulfing the cracked asphalt like fingers reaching out from the past stretched long shadows. I'd been to many abandoned places before, but something about this journey felt different, heavier, as if the air itself was thick with the weight of history. Pripyat Amusement Park, even the name sent a chill down my spine. Built in the late 20th century for the workers of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, it was meant to be a place of joy, a reward for their labor. But it never officially opened. The disaster struck just days before its scheduled debut, and the park was left to decay, a monument to what could have been. Now, over 30 years later, it stood as a ghostly relic, its rusted rides and crumbling structures, a stark reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded nearby. I'd heard the stories, of course. Tales of shadowy figures seen wandering the park at night, of laughter echoing from empty carousel horses, of a presence that lingered long after the last visitor had fled. Some said it was the spirits of those who perished in the disaster, unable to move on. Others claimed it was something older, something that had been awakened by the catastrophe. I wasn't sure what to believe, but as I parked my car at the edge of the exclusion zone and stepped out into the cold, I felt a prickle of unease. This place was different. I could feel it. The entrance to the park was marked by a faded archway, the once bright letters spelling out Pripyat Amusement Park, now barely legible, their paint chipped and worn. Beyond it, the park stretched out before me, a sprawling expanse of decay. The Ferris wheel loomed in the distance, its yellow cars hanging motionless, their windows shattered like broken eyes. To my left, the bumper cars sat in a tangled heap, their metal frames rusted and twisted. And straight ahead, the carousel, its horses frozen mid-gallop, their painted smiles now grotesque in the dim light. I took a deep breath and stepped through the archway, my boots crunching on the gravel path. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of metal or the rustle of leaves in the wind. It was as if the park itself was holding its breath, waiting for something or someone. As I walked deeper into the park, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every shadow seemed to move just out of the corner of my eye. Every gust of wind carried whispers that were almost words. I told myself it was just my imagination, heightened by the stories I'd heard, but the unease lingered. The Ferris wheel, my first stop was the Ferris wheel. It was the most iconic structure in the park, and I'd seen countless photos of it online, its silhouette stark against the sky. Up close, it was even more imposing. The metal groaned as I approached, as if protesting my presence. I placed my hand on one of the support beams, feeling the cold, rough surface beneath my fingers. For a moment, I thought I heard something, a faint giggle, like a child's laughter. I spun around, but there was no one there. Just the empty park, stretching out in all directions. I shook my head, trying to clear the unease. It was probably just the wind, or maybe a bird. But as I turned back to the Ferris wheel, I noticed something odd. One of the cars, about halfway up, was swaying slightly, as if someone had just stepped out of it. I stared at it for a long moment, but it didn't move again. Maybe it was just the breeze, I told myself. But the air was still now, almost unnaturally so. The carousel. I decided to move on, making my way toward the carousel. As I walked, I couldn't help but think about the history of this place. The people who had worked here, the families who had planned to visit, the children who never got to ride the rides. It was a tragedy on so many levels, and the park stood as a silent testament to that loss. The carousel was in worse shape than I'd expected. The horses were covered in grime, their once vibrant colors faded to muted tones. Some were missing limbs, others had cracked faces, their eyes staring blankly into the distance. I stepped onto the platform, the wood creaking under my weight. The center of the carousel, where the machinery was housed, was a tangle of rusted gears and broken mirrors. It was hard to imagine this place ever being full of life. As I stood there, I felt a sudden chill, as if the temperature had dropped several degrees. I shivered, pulling my jacket tighter around me. And then I heard it, a soft melodic tune, faint but unmistakable. It was the sound of a carousel organ, playing a tune that seemed both familiar and foreign. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. There was no way the music could be playing. The park had been abandoned for decades, its power long since cut off. I turned slowly, scanning the area for any sign of movement. But the park was still, the only sound now the faint echo of the music in my ears. Had I imagined it? I wasn't sure. But as I stepped off the carousel, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. One of the horses, the one closest to me, was moving. Not much, just a slight up and down motion, as if it were being ridden by an invisible child. Setting up the equipment, I backed away, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. This wasn't possible. It had to be a trick of the light, or maybe the wind again. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Something was here, something that didn't want me to leave. I decided to set up my equipment. If there was paranormal activity in this park, I needed to capture it. I pulled out my audio recorder and set it on the edge of the carousel platform, then positioned my camera to capture the area around the Ferris wheel. Maybe, if I was lucky, I'd catch something on film. As I worked, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the park. The light took on a golden hue, almost beautiful in its desolation, but the beauty was deceptive. It only made the place feel more haunted, more alive with the ghosts of the past. The voice. I was just finishing up when I heard a voice. It was faint, barely more than a whisper, but it was clear enough to make out the words, "Help me." I spun around, my heart racing. "Who's there?" I called out, but there was no answer. The park was silent once more. I waited, straining to hear anything else, but the voice didn't come again. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I decided to investigate the area where the voice had come from, near the bumper cars. As I approached, I noticed something strange. One of the cars, a bright red one, was positioned differently from the others. While the rest were piled in a chaotic heap, this one sat apart, almost as if it had been deliberately placed there. I knelt down to examine it, and that's when I saw it, a small faded photograph tucked under the seat. I carefully pulled it out, my hands trembling slightly. The photo was old, its edges worn and yellowed, but the image was still clear. It showed a young girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, standing in front of the Ferris wheel. She was smiling, her eyes bright with excitement. But there was something off about the photo, something that sent a chill down my spine. Behind her, in the shadows of the Ferris wheel, there was a figure, a dark, indistinct shape that seemed to be watching her. I stared at the photo for a long moment, trying to make sense of it. Who was this girl? And what was that figure in the background? I had a sinking feeling that this was connected to the voice I'd heard, to the presence I'd felt since I arrived. Twilight and tension. As I stood up, the light suddenly shifted, the golden hues giving way to the deep blues of twilight. The park seemed to change around me, the shadows growing longer, more menacing. I knew I needed to leave soon. Exploring an abandoned amusement park at night was not something I wanted to do alone, but I also knew I couldn't leave without answers. I decided to take the photo with me. Maybe I could find out who the girl was, or what had happened to her. As I slipped it into my pocket, I heard the voice again, closer this time. "Please help me." I turned toward the sound, and for a split second, I thought I saw her, a flicker of movement, a small figure darting between the bumper cars. But when I looked again, there was nothing. Just the empty park, silent and still. My heart was pounding now, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I knew I was on the edge of something that could either prove everything I'd ever believed about the paranormal, or send me running in fear. But I couldn't turn back now. I had to know. I took a deep breath and called out, "Who are you? What do you need help with?" For a moment, there was only silence. And then, from the shadows, came a response that made my blood run cold. "I can't find my way out." The cliffhanger. I froze, unsure of what to do next. Was this a ghost, a trapped soul, or something else entirely? I had to find out, but as the last light of day faded, I knew I was running out of time. With my camera and recorder still set up, I decided to stay a little longer to see if I could capture more evidence. But as I waited, the park seemed to grow darker, the air colder, and the feeling of being watched intensified. I couldn't shake the sense that something was closing in, something that didn't want me here. And then, just as I was about to pack up, I heard a low, guttural growl coming from the direction of the Ferris wheel. It was unlike anything I'd ever heard before, a sound that seemed to reverberate through the very ground beneath my feet. I grabbed my gear and ran, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't stop until I was back at my car, the park's entrance archway fading into the distance behind me. As I drove away, I couldn't help but glance in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something following me. But there was nothing, just the empty road, stretching out into the night. I didn't know what I'd encountered in Pripyat Amusement Park, but I knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. There were more parks to explore, more stories to uncover, and I was determined to see this through, no matter how terrifying it became. The photograph of the girl haunted me. Her bright smile, frozen in time, contrasted sharply with the shadowy figure lurking behind her in the image. It was as if the park itself had captured something sinister, something that refused to let go. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was the key to understanding what I'd encountered in Pripyat Amusement Park: the whispers, the moving carousel horse, the chilling voice pleading for help. Her name was Anya Petrova, or so I suspected, and I needed answers. Back at my hotel, a cramped room in a nearby town outside the Chernobyl exclusion zone, I sat at a wobbly desk, the photograph propped against a flickering lamp. My laptop glowed with open tabs, articles, forums, and grainy videos about Pripyat. The park's history was well documented, but details about specific individuals, especially children like Anya, were scarce. The Chernobyl disaster had overshadowed personal stories, burying them under the weight of a global tragedy. Still, I scoured digital archives, hoping to find a trace of her. After hours of fruitless searching, I sent an email to Victor, a local historian I'd found through a Chernobyl research group. I attached a scan of the photograph and described what I'd experienced: the voice, the moving horse, the eerie sense of being watched. His reply came faster than I expected, just past midnight. Her name was Anya Petrova, he wrote. Daughter of Mikhail Petrova, an engineer who worked on the park. She disappeared the day before the disaster, April 25, 1986. Her body was never found. He paused there, then added, "That figure in the photo, it's not natural. Meet me at the park tomorrow at dawn. I'll tell you more." Sleep didn't come easily that night. The photograph sat on the desk, and every time I glanced at it, I swore the figure in the background seemed to shift, its edges blurring like smoke. I told myself it was exhaustion, but the unease gnawed at me. By 5 in the morning, I was packed and ready, my gear camera, audio recorder, flashlight, and a notebook stuffed into a backpack. The drive to Pripyat was silent, the forest around me cloaked in pre-dawn mist. The trees, bare and twisted, seemed to lean closer as I passed, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching for my car. Victor was waiting at the park's entrance, his face pale and lined with worry. He was older than I'd expected, maybe in his 60s, with gray hair and eyes that darted nervously. "You shouldn't have come back," he said as I stepped out of the car. "This place, it doesn't let go of everyone who enters." I showed him the photograph again, and his hands trembled as he held it. "This is Anya," he confirmed, his voice low. "She loved this park. Her father brought her here during construction, let her play among the rides before they were finished. When she vanished, Mikhail went mad with grief. He searched until the evacuation, and even after, he kept coming back." As we walked through the rusted archway, Victor shared more. The park was built in the late 1970s, meant to be a shining gift for the workers of the Chernobyl plant. But there were stories, whispers of accidents during construction, workers who fell from the Ferris wheel, tools that went missing only to reappear in strange places. Locals believed the land was cursed, that something ancient slept beneath it, disturbed when the park's foundations were laid. The park was quieter than the day before, the air heavy with a stillness that felt unnatural. The Ferris wheel loomed ahead, its yellow cars faded to a sickly hue, their windows shattered. The carousel's horses stared blankly, their paint peeling like dead skin. I noticed something new. A red bumper car I'd seen upright yesterday was now flipped on its side, as if someone had tossed it in a fit of rage. I pointed it out to Victor, but he only shook his head. "This place moves things," he said. "It plays tricks. We stopped at the carousel, and I set up my audio recorder, hoping to catch the whispers I'd heard before. As I adjusted the settings, a loud clang echoed from the Ferris wheel. One of the cars was swinging wildly, its chains rattling despite the still air. Victor grabbed my arm. "We need to leave," he whispered, but I couldn't. Not yet. At the base of the Ferris wheel, I found something strange, a small rusted key, half buried in the dirt. It was ornate, too old to belong to the park's modern machinery. I held it up, and Victor's eyes widened. "That's not from here," he said. "It's older, much older. Maybe from something beneath the park." The air grew colder, and a whisper drifted from the shadows. "Anya." It was faint but clear, and it sent a shiver down my spine. Victor's face drained of color. "That's her," he said. "She's still here." I called out, asking who was there, but the only response was the creak of the Ferris wheel, as if it were laughing at us. We moved toward a boarded-up shed near the roller coaster, its wood warped and splintered. Victor said it was the old maintenance shed, abandoned even before the disaster. As we approached, a flickering light glowed through the cracks in the boards. I pried one loose with my crowbar, revealing a dusty interior. A lit lantern sat on a table, surrounded by rusted tools and yellowed papers. The flame was steady, impossible in a place without power for decades. On the wall were blueprints of the park, covered in frantic handwriting. "It's awake. We disturbed it. God help us." I reached for the lantern, but it flickered out, and a child's voice whispered, "Please, help me find my way out." My flashlight beam swept the room, landing on a tattered doll where the lantern had been. Its eyes were missing, and its dress was stained with something dark. Victor grabbed my arm, dragging me outside. "This isn't just Anya," he said, his voice shaking. "There's something else here, something older. We need to go." But I couldn't leave. The key, the doll, the voice, they were pieces of a puzzle I had to solve. As we stumbled back to the entrance, I slipped the key into my pocket, knowing I'd be back. The park wasn't just haunted, it was alive, and it wanted something from me. The rusted key felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket, its weight heavier than its size suggested. I spent the night in my hotel room, turning it over in my hands, its intricate carvings glinting faintly under the dim glow of the bedside lamp. It was ancient, far older than anything in Pripyat Amusement Park, and I couldn't shake the certainty that it unlocked something crucial, perhaps the truth behind Anya's disappearance, or the source of the malevolent presence I'd felt. Victor's words about a curse, an ancient entity tied to the land, echoed in my mind, mingling with the memory of Anya's whispered plea, "Help me find my way out." I knew I had to go back, no matter how much my instincts screamed to leave this place behind. I barely slept, my dreams filled with shadowy figures and the distant sound of carousel music. By 4 in the morning, I was up, poring over the scanned pages of Mikhail's journal I'd photographed before leaving the park. His words were frantic, filled with guilt over Anya's disappearance and fear of something he called the Guardian. I needed more answers, and I needed Victor's help. I texted him, pleading for one more trip to the park. His response was curt, "You're insane. Meet me at 5, last time." I could sense his fear, but I was grateful he agreed. The drive to Pripyat was shrouded in a thick pre-dawn fog that clung to the road like a living thing. The forest around us seemed to pulse, the bare trees leaning closer, their branches scraping the car like claws. Victor sat in the passenger seat, silent, his hands clenched in his lap. "This is a mistake," he muttered as we pulled up to the park's entrance, the faded archway looming like a gateway to another world. I didn't argue. Part of me agreed with him, but the pull of the mystery was stronger than my fear. We headed straight for the maintenance shed, its boarded-up facade even more foreboding in the dim light. The air was heavy, the silence broken only by the crunch of our boots on the gravel path. The park felt different today, angrier, as if it knew we were getting closer to its secrets. The carousel horses stared at us, their cracked faces seeming to smirk, and the Ferris wheel creaked ominously, though there was no wind to stir it. Inside the shed, the air was stale, thick with the smell of rust and decay. The blueprints and papers I'd seen yesterday were still scattered across the table, but the lantern was gone, leaving only a faint scorch mark where it had stood. I rummaged through the debris, my heart racing as I uncovered a small locked metal box buried under a pile of moldy rags. The key fit perfectly, its mechanism clicking with a sound that echoed in the quiet shed. Inside was a leather-bound journal, a stack of yellowed letters, and a small silver locket engraved with the letter A. The journal was Mikhail's, its pages brittle but legible. It detailed the park's construction, starting with optimism but growing darker with each entry. Workers reported strange incidents, stools vanishing, shadows moving in their peripheral vision, whispers in the night. Mikhail dismissed them at first, but then Anya disappeared. "I hear her voice," he wrote. "She's calling from the park, but it's not her. Something else is here, something we woke when we built this place." His final entry was a scrawl. "Elena was right. The Guardian is awake. It has Anya, God forgive me." The letters were from Elena, a historian who'd corresponded with Mikhail during the park's construction. She warned of an ancient burial ground beneath the site, dating back centuries to a time when the land was sacred to a forgotten people. A guardian spirit, bound to protect the dead, had been disturbed when the park's foundations were laid. It was vengeful, feeding on innocence, and Elena believed it had taken Anya as its prize. Mikhail had ignored her, thinking her tales were superstition, but now the curse was alive, binding Anya's soul to the park. As I read, the ground trembled, a low rumble that shook dust from the shed's ceiling. The door slammed shut with a force that rattled the walls, trapping us inside. My flashlight flickered, its beam dimming as if the darkness was swallowing it. A shadow moved in the corner, a tall, indistinct figure, its edges writhing like smoke. It was the same shape from Anya's photograph, and it radiated a malice that made my skin crawl. Victor whispered, "The Guardian," his voice barely audible over the pounding of my heart. The air grew suffocating, the temperature plummeting until my breath fogged in front of me. The figure lunged, its shadowy tendrils reaching for us, cold and sharp like knives. I clutched the locket, my hands trembling, and shouted, "Anya, we're here." The door burst open, the figure dissolving into a rush of cold wind that left us gasping. Victor grabbed my arm, his eyes wild. "We're done here, Ethan. It's going to kill us." But I couldn't leave. The journal, the letters, the locket, they were proof that Anya was trapped, her soul held by this entity. I had to find a way to free her. Victor refused to stay, sprinting toward the entrance, but I lingered, my flashlight sweeping the park. The roller coaster loomed ahead, its tracks twisted and broken, vines choking the structure like veins. At its base, I found a rusted grate, half hidden under overgrown weeds. It led to a tunnel, dark and narrow, the air inside thick with the smell of earth and something fouler. Mikhail's journal had mentioned tunnel's old foundations, possibly part of the burial ground Elena described. This was where the Guardian's power was strongest, where Anya was held. My heart pounded as I pried the grate open, the metal screeching in protest. The darkness beyond was absolute, a void that seemed to beckon me. I thought of Anya's voice, her desperate plea, and knew I had no choice. I took a deep breath, my flashlight beam trembling in my hand, and stepped into the tunnel, the shadows swallowing me whole. The tunnel was a descent into a nightmare, its walls slick with moisture that glistened like sweat in the weak beam of my flashlight. The air was thick, heavy with the stench of ancient earth and something fouler, something that clung to the back of my throat like decay. Each step echoed, the sound swallowed by a silence so deep it felt alive, as if the tunnel itself were breathing, watching, waiting. The locket in my hand, Anya's locket, engraved with a delicate A, was warm against my palm, its faint heat the only comfort in this suffocating darkness. I clung to it, a lifeline to the girl whose voice had haunted me, whose plea for help had drawn me here. I'd left Victor behind, his fear outweighing his curiosity, and now I was alone, deeper beneath Pripyat Amusement Park than I'd ever intended to go. The tunnel twisted and turned, its path narrowing until I had to crouch, my shoulders brushing the damp stone. The air grew colder with every step, the temperature dropping until my breath fogged in front of me, curling like specters in the flashlight's beam. My heart pounded, a relentless drumbeat that matched the rhythm of my thoughts. Turn back. You shouldn't be here. This is a mistake. But Anya's voice, her desperate, "Help me find my way out," echoed in my mind, louder than my fear. I thought of Mikhail's journal, his frantic words about the Guardian, and Elena's letters warning of an ancient evil. This was where it all led, the heart of the park's curse. The tunnel seemed endless, its walls closing in, the darkness pressing against me like a physical force. My flashlight flickered, its beam stuttering as if the batteries were dying, though I'd checked them just hours ago. Shadows danced at the edges of my vision, shapes that vanished when I turned to look. I told myself it was my imagination, fueled by exhaustion and the weight of what I'd learned. But deep down, I knew better. Something was here with me, something that had been here long before the park was built, something that had claimed Anya and countless others. After what felt like hours, the tunnel opened into a cavern, vast and cavernous, its ceiling lost in a sea of shadow. My flashlight barely reached the far walls, but at the center of the space stood an altar, carved from black stone that seemed to absorb the light. Its surface was etched with symbol spirals, jagged lines, shapes that seemed to writhe when I stared too long. A small handprint, no bigger than a child's, marked the stone's center, surrounded by a dark stain that looked disturbingly like blood. I knew, without a doubt, that this was Anya's mark, left in a moment of terror or desperation. The air pulsed with a low hum, a vibration that settled in my bones, making my teeth ache. This was the heart of the curse, the place where the Guardian held its power. I stepped closer, my boots scuffing against the uneven floor. The locket grew warmer, almost hot, as if it sensed the altar's presence. I whispered, "Anya, are you here?" My voice sounded small, swallowed by the cavern's vastness. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, a faint shimmer appeared before the altar, coalescing into the form of a girl, Anya wide-eyed, her dress tattered but recognizable from the photograph. Her eyes were wide with fear, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Ethan, help me. It won't let me go. It's so dark." Before I could respond, the air shifted, growing heavy and cold, the hum rising to a deafening roar that made my ears ring. The shadows around the altar thickened, coalescing into a figure, a towering mass of writhing darkness, its form shifting like smoke, but solid enough to make the ground tremble beneath my feet. Its eyes, if you could call them that, were twin voids, glowing faintly with a sickly green light. Its voice was a grinding rasp, like stone scraping against stone, each word a weight that pressed against my chest. "This place is mine," it said. "She is mine, you are mine." The Guardian lunged, its shadowy tendrils shooting toward me, cold and sharp like shards of ice. I stumbled back, my flashlight falling from my hand, its beam spinning wildly across the cavern walls. The tendrils wrapped around my arms, my legs, pinning me in place, their touch burning with a cold that seared my skin. Panic surged, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. I struggled, but the Guardian's grip was unyielding, its presence suffocating, like drowning in darkness. My vision blurred, the cavern fading as the entity's voice filled my mind. "You cannot take what is mine." I clung to the locket, its warmth a faint spark against the overwhelming cold. My mind raced, grasping at fragments of Elena's letters. She'd written of a ritual, a way to banish the Guardian by reminding it of the humanity it had lost, by giving voice to the souls it held captive. I didn't know if it would work, but it was my only chance. With a trembling hand, I opened the locket, revealing Anya's photograph, her smiling face a stark contrast to the horror around me. "Anya," I said, my voice shaking but firm, "you're not forgotten. You're free." Anya's spirit moved closer, her translucent form glowing faintly in the darkness. She reached for the locket, her fingers brushing mine, and in that moment, a blinding light erupted from the altar. It was searing, white-hot, filling the cavern with a brilliance that burned away the shadows. The guardian screamed, a sound that shook the walls, a wail of rage and pain that echoed like 1,000 voices crying out at once. Its form unraveled, tendrils dissolving into wisps of smoke, its eyes dimming as the light consumed it. The ground trembled, rocks falling from the ceiling, and I shielded my face, praying the cavern wouldn't collapse. When the light faded, the cavern was still, the hum gone, the air no longer heavy with malice. Anya stood before me, her spirit radiant, her smile no longer tinged with fear. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered, her voice soft but clear, like a breeze on a summer day. She reached out, her hand hovering over mine, and for a moment, I felt a warmth that chased away the cold. Then she faded, her form dissolving into motes of light that drifted upward, disappearing into the darkness above. I stood there, trembling, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. My flashlight lay on the ground, its beam faint but steady, and I retrieved it, my hands shaking with exhaustion and relief. The altar was just a stone now, its symbols dull, its power gone. The handprint remained, but the stain around it had faded, as if Anya's freedom had cleansed it. I made my way back through the tunnel, the path seeming shorter now, the air lighter. When I emerged into the park, the first rays of dawn were breaking over the horizon, casting a pale golden light across the rusted rides. The Ferris wheel stood silent, its cars motionless, and the carousel horses no longer seemed to smirk. The park felt different, as if a storm had passed, leaving only echoes of its former darkness. I drove away, the locket still in my hand, its warmth a reminder of what I'd accomplished. I'd come to Pripyat seeking answers, and I'd found them along with a horror I'd never imagined. As I glanced in the rearview mirror, the park's archway faded into the distance, and I wondered how many other places held such secrets, such entities waiting in the shadows. For now, I'd saved one soul, but the road ahead promised more mysteries, more terrors, and I wasn't sure I was ready for what they might bring. The road stretched out before me, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the desolate forest. As I drove away from Pripyat Amusement Park, the locket rested in my jacket pocket, no longer warm, but a solid reminder of what I'd faced in that cavern beneath the park. Anya's smile, her whispered "thank you," lingered in my mind, a fragile light against the darkness of what I'd encountered. The sun was rising now, its pale golden rays filtering through the trees, but the warmth did little to ease the chill that had settled in my bones. I'd come to Pripyat seeking answers, and I'd found them, along with a truth far more terrifying than I'd ever imagined. As I drove, my thoughts drifted back to the park, its rusted rides and silent midway frozen in time. The Ferris wheel, its cars hanging like broken promises. The carousel, its horses staring with cracked, empty eyes. The bumper cars, tangled in a heap as if abandoned mid-game. These were more than relics of a forgotten era. They were witnesses to a tragedy that went beyond the Chernobyl disaster. The park held stories, not just of Anya and the Guardian, but of countless others whose laughter had once filled the air, only to be silenced by time and something darker. I couldn't help but wonder, how many other parks, scattered across the globe, held similar secrets? How many other souls were trapped, waiting for someone to hear their cries? The memory of the cavern haunted me most. That ancient altar, its symbols pulsing with a life of their own, and the Guardian a being of shadow and malice that had claimed Anya for over 30 years. I'd faced it, felt its cold tendrils wrap around me, heard its voice rasp that I too belonged to it. But the locket, Anya's locket, had been the key not just to her freedom, but to breaking the curse that bound her. When she reached for it, when the light erupted and the Guardian screamed, I'd felt something shift, not just in the park but in me. I'd come here as a skeptic, a paranormal investigator chasing evidence, but I left with a certainty that some things defy explanation, that some places are more than they seem. Pripyat wasn't just an abandoned amusement park. It was a graveyard of dreams, a place where joy had been twisted into something sinister. Yet there was a haunting beauty to it, a melancholy that lingered in the decay. The way the vines curled around the roller coaster tracks, like nature reclaiming what man had built. The way the morning light softened the harsh edges of the rusted metal. The way the silence seemed to carry echoes of laughter long gone. It was as if the park itself was caught between worlds, neither fully alive nor fully dead, a liminal space where the past and present collided. I thought of Mikhail, Anya's father, and his desperate search for his daughter. His journal had been a window into his grief, his guilt over ignoring Elena's warnings about the burial ground beneath the park. He'd believed in progress, in the promise of a brighter future, but he'd paid the ultimate price. And Elena, the historian who'd tried to warn him, her letters were a testament to the power of stories, of the knowledge passed down through generations. Without them, I might never have found the ritual, never have known how to free Anya. Their words, their pain, had guided me, and I felt a responsibility to carry their story forward. As the forest gave way to open fields, I pulled over, needing a moment to process everything. I stepped out of the car, the cool morning air sharp against my skin. The locket was still in my pocket, and I took it out, opening it to see Anya's photograph. Her smile was unchanged, but now it felt like a promise kept, a weight lifted. I wondered if she was truly at peace, if the guardian was gone for good, or if some fragment of its darkness lingered in the park, waiting for the next soul to wander too close. The thought sent a shiver down my spine, but it also fueled my resolve. Pripyat was just one park, one story. There were others, hundreds, maybe thousands scattered across the world, each with its own ghosts, its own curses. I thought of Spree Park in Germany, its abandoned rides overtaken by forest, where locals whispered of shadowy figures dancing in the moonlight. Or Nara Dreamland in Japan, a decaying replica of Disneyland, where urban explorers reported hearing children's laughter from empty rides. Each park was a puzzle, a challenge to unravel, and I knew I couldn't stop now. The terror of Pripyat had shaken me, but it had also awakened something, a need to confront the unknown, to give voice to the forgotten. I'd started this journey as a skeptic, but now I saw these places for what they were, not just ruins, but portals to stories that refused to die. The beauty of abandoned amusement parks lies in their contradictions. Their places of joy turn to sorrow, of life turn to decay. They draw us in with their nostalgia, their faded colors and broken dreams, but they hold us with their secrets. Pripyat had shown me that, had forced me to face a darkness I hadn't been prepared for. Yet in that darkness, I'd found light. Anya's freedom, a small victory against an ancient evil. It wasn't enough to erase the horror, but it was enough to keep me going. I got back in the car, the locket tucked safely in my pocket. The road ahead was long, and I knew it would lead to other parks, other mysteries. Each one would be a risk, a step into the unknown, but I was ready. Or at least, I told myself I was. The memory of the guardian's voice, its claim that I was mine, lingered like a shadow, a reminder that some things don't let go easily. But I'd faced it and survived, and that gave me hope. As I drove, I thought about what I'd tell others about Pripyat. Not just the facts, the disaster, the abandonment, the curse, but the feeling of standing in a place where time had stopped, where the past whispered through the silence. It was a story worth sharing, not just for the thrills, but for the questions it raised. What happens to the joy left behind in these places? Does it fade, or does it transform, becoming something else entirely? I didn't have all the answers, but I knew one thing. I'd keep searching, keep exploring, until I found them. The sun was higher now, the fields around me glowing with a warmth that felt almost hopeful. But the road ahead was uncertain, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Pripyat was only the beginning. There were other parks, other stories waiting in the shadows. And I'd find them, no matter what they held. The engine of my car hummed softly as I drove farther from Pripyat Amusement Park, the rusted archway now a distant speck in my rearview mirror. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long rays across the fields, but its warmth couldn't touch the chill that lingered in my chest. Anya's locket rested in my pocket, a quiet reminder of the battle I'd fought beneath the park, of the girl I'd freed and the guardian I'd faced. My hands gripped the steering wheel, still trembling slightly, not from fear alone, but from the weight of what I'd learned. Pripyat wasn't just a place, it was a warning, a glimpse into the shadows that hide in the places we once loved. I'd come to the park as a paranormal investigator, chasing evidence of the supernatural, hoping to capture whispers on my recorder or fleeting shapes on my camera. But what I found was more than evidence. It was a story that clawed its way into my soul. Anya Petrova, a girl lost to time, her spirit trapped by an ancient entity that fed on innocence. Mikhail's journal, filled with his desperate search for his daughter. Elena's letters, warning of a curse older than the park itself. The cavern, with its pulsing altar and the guardian's suffocating darkness. These weren't just fragments of a haunting. They were pieces of a puzzle that changed how I saw the world. As I drove, I couldn't stop thinking about the other parks out there, the ones I'd only read about in hushed forum posts or seen in grainy videos. Spree Park in Berlin, its abandoned rides swallowed by forest, where locals swore they saw figures dancing under the moonlight. Nara Dreamland in Japan, a crumbling echo of Disneyland, where explorers heard children's laughter from empty roller coasters. Lake Shawnee in West Virginia, built on a burial ground, where the spirits of children were said to wander. Each park was a relic, a snapshot of joy turned to decay, and each held its own secrets, its own ghosts. Pripyat had shown me what was possible, what was real, and now I couldn't unsee it. The road stretched on, and I found myself replaying every moment in the park. The creak of the Ferris wheel, swaying without wind. The carousel horse, moving as if ridden by an invisible child. Anya's voice pleading for help. And that final moment in the cavern, when the locket's light tore through the guardian's shadows, freeing her. It was a victory, but it came at a cost. I'd faced something ancient, something that knew my name, and its rasping claim, "You are mine," still echoed in my mind. I'd survived, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd only scratched the surface, that other parks held entities just as powerful, just as hungry. There's something about abandoned amusement parks that draws us in, isn't there? They're not just ruins. They're time capsules, holding memories of laughter and screams, of families and first dates, now left to rot. But it's the stories that keep us coming back, the urban legends, the whispers of hauntings, the grainy photos that show something just out of focus. Pripyat taught me that those stories aren't just tales to scare kids. Some are true, rooted in pain and loss, in mistakes made long ago. And once you've seen that truth, you can't look away. I pulled into a gas station, the fluorescent lights harsh after the soft glow of dawn. As I filled the tank, I thought about why I do this, why I chase these shadows, these places that most people avoid. It's not just about proving the paranormal exists. It's about giving voice to the forgotten, to people like Anya, whose stories might never be told otherwise. It's about facing the darkness and finding something human in it, something worth saving. Pripyat was my first step, but it won't be my last. There are too many parks, too many mysteries, and I'm not done yet. I want to hear your stories. Have you ever wandered into an abandoned place, a park, a theater, an old house, and felt something you couldn't explain? A chill that wasn't from the air, a whisper that wasn't the wind. Maybe you've been to a place like Pripyat, where the past feels alive, where the shadows seem to watch you. Share them with me. Tell me about the moments that made your heart race, the things you saw or thought you saw that still linger in your dreams. We're all drawn to the unknown, and every story adds a piece to the puzzle. And if this tale of Pripyat has left you hungry for more, I've got plenty of other stories to share. I've been to places that would make your skin crawl, haunted asylums where the walls seem to scream, forgotten cemeteries where the ground feels alive, abandoned mansions where mirrors show more than your reflection. Each one is a journey into the unknown, a chance to confront the things that hide in the dark. Check out my other accounts where I've documented these trips, from shaky footage of creaking doors to audio clips of voices that shouldn't be there. They're not just stories, they're experiences, and they're waiting for you. As I got back in the car, the locket shifted in my pocket, a quiet reminder of what I'd left behind. I wondered if Anya was truly at peace, if the guardian was gone for good, or if some fragment of its darkness still lingered in the park's shadows. The thought sent a shiver through me, but it also sparked a fire. I'd face the impossible and come out alive. Whatever lay ahead, whether in Spree Park, Nara Dreamland, or some other forgotten place, I'd be ready. The road curved toward the horizon, and I felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. Abandoned amusement parks are more than ruins. They're gateways to the past, to stories that refuse to die. Pripyat had shown me that, had forced me to confront a truth I couldn't ignore. Some places hold on to their memories, their pain, their darkness, and they don't let go easily. But I'm not one to walk away. I'll keep exploring, keep listening, keep chasing the shadows until I understand what they're trying to say. So tell me your stories. Share the moments that made you question what's real. And join me on this journey, because there's so much more to uncover. The world is full of forgotten places, and I'm not done finding them. Who knows what's waiting in the next park, behind the next rusted gate? Let's find out together.